La Llorona's Lament, a Mexican horror. Late one misty evening, deep in the Mexican countryside, Carlos drove down a narrow, winding road beside the river. The fog was thick, wrapping the landscape in a ghostly shroud that seemed almost alive. The only sounds were the occasional rustle of leaves and the soft murmur of the river beside him. The air felt heavy with an almost tangible sadness. The road stretched out endlessly, bordered by dense trees that loomed like dark sentinels. The oppressive silence was suddenly broken by a mournful wail that pierced the night air. At first, it was barely audible over the hum of the engine, but it quickly grew louder, more desperate. Carlos's heart began to race as he glanced nervously in the rearview mirror. He saw only the encroaching darkness. His breath came in shallow bursts. The wail continued, a heart-wrenching cry of unending sorrow. Carlos's mind raced back to the stories his grandmother had told him about La Llorona, the weeping woman who haunted rivers. The legend said that the closer you were to her, the louder her wail became, a haunting signal of imminent danger. The wail grew more intense, becoming a piercing, agonizing cry that seemed to pierce through his very bones. Carlos gripped the steering wheel tightly. He tried to steady his nerves. He glanced around, searching for the source of the sound. The wail was now a constant, chilling lament that filled the night, a haunting echo that seemed to seep into the car itself. The wailing abruptly stopped, leaving an oppressive silence. Carlos rolled up the windows, trying to shut out the unsettling quiet. He peered into the darkness, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. His pulse quickened. The legends of La Llorona warned that if you heard her wail, you should be cautious. She was known to appear to those who were close to death. Just then, Carlos saw her. At the edge of the riverbank stood a ghostly figure, her white dress fluttering eerily in the breeze. She was tall, with her long hair cascading down her back like a dark river. Her face was obscured in shadow, but her cries were unmistakable. The sight was both haunting and mesmerizing, her mournful presence captivating and terrifying. Carlos slowed the car, his eyes straining to make out the figure more clearly. Her cries were now a mournful chant that echoed across the river, mingling with the distant rustle of the trees. As he drew closer, the woman's face came into view, pale and hollow, with eyes that seemed to weep endlessly. The sight filled him with an icy dread, a chilling fear that gripped his very soul. His chest tightened with a growing sense of dread as he tried to turn away. But the car seemed to move of its own accord, drawn toward the spectral figure. The wail grew louder, more insistent, as if it were beckoning him closer. Carlos's breath came in ragged gasps, his mind racing with the stories of La Llorona and the peril she brought. The wail reached a crescendo, filling the night air with its sorrowful melody. Carlos's eyes were drawn inexorably to the river, where the figure stood, her outstretched arms seeming to call out to him. The sound was deafening now, a mournful cry that tugged at his very being. It filled him with a profound sense of despair. Desperation surged through Carlos as he tried to reverse the car, but his movements were clumsy and panicked. The wail was overwhelming, and he could feel the cold, oppressive presence of La Llorona pressing against him. With a final, frantic cry, he slammed the car into gear and sped away, the spectral figure fading into the misty darkness behind him. The next morning, the villagers found Carlos's car abandoned by the river, the driver's seat empty and the interior untouched. Save for a lone, haunting echo of La Llorona's lament that lingered in the air. His body was never recovered, and the villagers whispered of the weeping woman's tragic claim. The locals knew the truth all too well. La Llorona had claimed another soul. Her mournful cries forever echoing through the night, a chilling reminder of her eternal sorrow.